The Raiders were not in action in Week 10 and still found a way to get, well, somewhat of a victory. That plus more on Monday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for November 11th, 2024.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day, whether you're checking us out on YouTube or you're getting us wherever you find your favorite podcast. We definitely appreciate that. If you are checking us out on YouTube, thank you so much. The show continues to grow each and every day, and that's because of your support and because of the job my man Ari does each and every day behind the scenes. Without him, there is no Locked On Raider podcast on YouTube. So shout out to my man Ari. If you want to check him out on Twitter, at Ari Produces. If you want to hit me up as well, you can do that at yourboyq254, at yourboyq254. And if you want to be a part of the show, the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line is always wide open like some old school TV antennas, 707-654-4693. As a matter of fact, that's how we'll close out the show today. Got a lot of calls and texts from over the weekend, so we'll definitely go ahead and make that happen. That'll come up in segment number 3. Segment number 2, we'll take a look at college quarterbacks and what they did over the weekend. As we've been talking about and looking at what the Raiders' options are going to be coming up in 2025 to try to find their quarterback of the future. Just kind of want to go over some numbers and tell you what those potential quarterbacks did over the weekend. Here in segment number 1, we'll do news and notes of the day, whatever I gathered over the weekend, as we always do. And I'll jump right into it after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL, and you'll win $50 instantly when you play $5. And as I jump into the show, it is Monday. It is November 11th. It is Veterans Day. So thank you so much. Shout out to all the veterans out there. We do appreciate everything that you've done for the country, everything that you've done to allow guys like me and Ari and others to be able to put on programs like this. And if it wasn't for you, there would be no me. So I definitely appreciate you. I try to shout out to the veterans. I try to shout out to the active military. I shout out to the ones that we lost, right? The ones that, paid the ultimate sacrifice. I try to do that as much as possible. A lot of times it gets lost in the sauce and we don't recognize you enough, but definitely want to make sure we do that on Veterans Day. And so shout out to all the veterans out there. I have a huge appreciation for veterans. And really, I always have, but when I was in Central Texas at ESPN Central Texas and all the work we did there in Texas with Fort Hood, that was awesome and really a big time experience for me. And I learned a lot. So I want to make sure that I never, ever forget about the veterans or, the ones that lost their lives or the active military as well. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. And thank you so much. And as a matter of fact, it's really cool. I do my show on ESPN National, which is game night from 7 to 10 p.m. Pacific time, Monday through Friday. But I've also been filling in on Greeny Tuesdays and Wednesdays, which has been a really good opportunity. But they have a big tribute that they've been doing for veterans as well, and talking to many different players across the National Football League, and just having them shout out the veterans as well. And so it was really cool to hear Raider Nation's own Max Crosby shout out to the veterans, and he's got some really good ties to a veteran, his family members. So I thought I'd pass it along. So here it is right here. Max Crosby shouting out to the vets.
Honoring America's heroes on Veterans Day with Max Crosby.
First off, got the utmost respect for the veterans in this country. We wouldn't be here and being able to do what we do and live out our dreams without those guys protecting us. My grandpa, God rest his soul, I know he's watching down on me. He passed away not too long ago. And you talk about legacy. My grandpa was in Vietnam, served in our country, and he was the leader of our family. He's the number one Crosby, in my life. And he's not here anymore, but I know he's with me every step of the way, and he's watching down. So, big shout out to the veterans. Can't thank you guys enough. And without y'all, none of this would be possible.
Honoring America's heroes on Veterans Day on ESPN Radio.
So thought that was really cool and really blessed to be able to be a part of ESPN. And as soon as I heard that when I was on the radio on Friday, I said, hey, man, you got to send that to me. I got to pass that along to Raider Nation on the Locked On Raiders podcast. So hopefully you enjoy Max Crosby shouting out to the veterans. And again, definitely want to make sure that we show all the love as much as possible that we do. Again, a lot of times I get lost in the sauce and I don't do it enough. But we're glad when it's highlighted and we're able to bring that to the table. Sticking with Max Crosby, he was fined over the weekend. He was fined $11,255 for unnecessary roughness penalty, a hit on Joe Burrow That was a play that was whistled dead on Sunday, and it was whistled dead. He was offsides, and he still drilled Joe Burrow. He got a penalty for it, but he was also he was fined $11,255 for that. Not a big surprise, something that we kind of all felt was going to happen, but it did in fact happen over the weekend. Also, I wanted to let you know what the current draft order is. And I hate the fact that it's November 11th and we're talking about the draft right now, but when you're a 2-7 team, that's what it is, right? I mean, I'm not going to candy coat it. I'm not going to make it seem like that the Raiders are going to go on some big run and all of a sudden make it to the playoffs and go to have a deep dive into the playoffs. Like, I mean, it is what it is. As we've been talking about for a few weeks now, it's evaluation season. So wanted to give you an updated draft order as of today and as of all the games in week 10 got wrapped up. The Jacksonville Jaguars currently are the number 1 pick overall. They're sitting there at 2-8. They do not need a quarterback, which is obviously good for the Raiders. Now, the number 2 team in the draft order is the New York Giants. They're 2-8 as well. They will need a quarterback. So that's a team that you have to look at when you're focusing in on, okay, who wants a quarterback and who doesn't. The Giants definitely need one. Tennessee Titans, they come in at number 3. They're 2-7 overall. They need a quarterback. Cleveland Browns, they're number 4 overall in the draft order. They're 2-7. And then there's the Raiders right there at 2-7 as well. And obviously with the bye week, they did not play, but they're sitting there at number 5. So last week, before the games got underway, they were number 6. So they've, increased their draft order. They've got one step closer in their draft order to number 5 overall. And look, I'll never sit there and root for the Raiders to lose. I know they have 8 games left. I'm not that guy that's sitting here say lose every game so you get the number 1 overall pick. But, whatever happens, happens, right? I mean, the way that they've been playing, they've been going all out anyway and have been losing. So they very well could end up with a, top 2, top 3, top 4, top 5 pick, whatever the case may be. So I don't really have to root for them to lose. They're just honestly not a very good team. But they're at number 5. The Dolphins are behind them at number 6. The Patriots, number 7. The Saints at number 8. The Jets at number 9. And the Carolina Panthers at 10. And the Carolina Panthers, who need a quarterback really bad, they got the Bryce Young situation. All of a sudden, they got a 2-game winning streak, and they're probably thinking, what the hell are we doing? We're winning more games than we want to win. One other team, number 11, is the Dallas Cowboys, and they got mollywopped on Sunday. I mean, they really did. The Philadelphia Eagles gave it to them, and they're sitting there at number 11. They don't need a quarterback, obviously, so that doesn't affect the Raiders, but just wild to see that they paid Dak, they paid CD, and they're terrible. They're 3-6. Dak is out for the year, and they're just an absolute mess. So when you're looking at the top 10, the Jaguars, they need a quarterback, but they're not going to get one. They paid Trevor Lawrence. The Giants, they're number 2. They need a quarterback. Titans, number 3, need a quarterback. Browns, number 4, need a quarterback. Raiders, number 5, need a quarterback. Dolphins at number 6, they got decisions to make. They paid their quarterback, but obviously Tua and his injury history, his concussion history, I should say, is going to play play a big role in the decisions that they make. The Patriots, number 7, they just got their quarterback. Drake May is the truth. He looks really good. I know there's a lot of Raider Nation that shouted out and said, Q, I think the Raiders should go after Drake May. And I was like, I don't know. He had a down season after having a really good season. Drake May looks really good in New England. So they got their guy. The Saints, now they've won a game and they need a quarterback. Derek Carr, I don't think is the long-term solution. Spencer Rattler either. But now they're 3-7, so they're hurting themselves. The Jets, not going to lie, man. The Jets, they lost 31-6 to the Cardinals. Devontae Adams had 6 catches for 31 yards on 13 targets, put 1 on the ground in the end zone. They're number 9 in the draft order. I'm not going to lie. I don't like to be petty. Like, none of us should be petty, or at least I don't think I should be petty. But every time I see the Jets lose, it just kind of puts a warm spot in my heart, right? And when I see Devontae somewhat struggle or put a ball on the ground, it kind of puts a warm spot in my heart because so many issues and so many fingers that he pointed at the Raiders organization, and rightfully so, there's a lot of them that can be pointed at him as well. He's not quite the Devontae Adams, and I am surprised that I'm even saying this, but he's not quite the Devontae Adams that he was, right? And it's being shown now that he's back with his best buddy in Aaron Rodgers, and they're still not having success. So it really kind of opens my eyes to, maybe he's starting to drop off a little bit himself. And so when the Jets continue to lose, like I said, it continues to make, kind of a warm spot in my heart since that was what he preferred. He preferred to be traded from the Raiders because they were such a mess. Yeah, that such a mess team is 2-7, and the Jets that he had to go to is 3-7. So there's that. But again, don't like to be petty, but clearly I was being petty. Coming up in segment number 2, well, how about those quarterbacks? I told you the teams that need quarterbacks. There's a handful of them that were on display over the weekend. What did they do? You know where I'm at. Shedeur Sanders is my guy. But what did all the quarterbacks do that could play a role for the Silver and Black upcoming next season? We'll talk about that in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about a couple of great sponsors here on the Locked On Raiders podcast, including our good friends at 5 Hour Energy. They know that being a passionate football fan is not just a hobby, it's a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to power through all the day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, or agonizing second time overtime, even those defeats, which is why they've created the Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel. The energy shot made just for super fans like you, the fans who are first in the parking lot and who are last to leave. We all see you. 5 Hour Energy knows that no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for the big tailgate or ironing your jersey, your game day to-do list is always a mile long. That's why the limited edition Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot is here to help keep you fueled throughout the season. And I'll tell you this, man, sometimes stopping in at the store and just picking up a quick 5 Hour Energy, boom, bada bing on my way to Allegiant Stadium, it's a perfect pick-me-up. So that's an easy way to get that extra energy that you need to have. So what's your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with 5 Hour Energy. Available on 5hourenergy.com. Shipped nationwide. I also want to tell you about our good friends at Prize Picks, which is also the title sponsor. They're the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in award winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. All you got to do is pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Prize Picks now offers Venmo for quick and easy deposits and withdrawals into your account this sports season. They put their members first. All withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. So when your pick hits, you can get your money as quick as 15 minutes. And they've also invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks does not hit. So right now, all you need to do, it's real simple. All you got to do is download the app, use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. It's all one word. It's all lowercase. You get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app. It's super simple. Use the promo code all lowercase LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to jump into a handful of quarterbacks that were in action over the weekend. And I say it all the time, I don't have a college football team because I went to that college and that's just who I root for. I watch college football and I watch it religiously, love college football, but I watch it to scout for the NFL. I've done it for years. I'll do it for years, right? That's just what it is. I didn't go to a college, so I don't have an alma mater, but I yell Roll Tide all the time. I'm the guy at the house yelling Roll Tide for no absolute reason, but it's cool because how many players have come from Alabama and put them in the league? Right. But there's so many great programs out there, and still the landscape of college football right now, the way that it's set up with, NIL and the transfer portal. Now there's so many great players across the landscape, where at one point it used to be guys would sit there at Alabama or other schools like LSU or Georgia or Ohio State, whatever powerhouse you want to talk about. They'd sit there and wait to play. But now they don't have to because of NIL and the transfer portal. So wanted to go over the landscape of college football, what I saw over the weekend, and some quarterbacks that stood out, guys that could potentially be in line to be the Raiders franchise quarterback coming up in April in the draft. And normally I wouldn't be talking about this early in the game. It's only November, but this is what it is, right? And so, of course, I'm going to be paying attention the rest of the way. And I encourage Raider Nation, I encourage you to do the same thing, right? If you want to see who potentially could be the Raiders' next quarterback, pay attention to what's going on in college football. Right? The 12-team playoff ranking or 12-team playoff format is going to be fun. The rankings come out every single Tuesday. So that's something to look forward to. And, you might just see your next franchise quarterback on the big stage in the playoffs. So wanted to go through 5 quarterbacks really quickly that I paid attention to over the weekend. And first and foremost is Shedeur Sanders. He's got my vote. I'm hoping that he ends up being the guy. And I know that there's a lot of conversation around him and what they're doing in Colorado. But it took me a while to get there. Not going to lie. But everything I see from Shedeur, I think that he could be the truth. I think that he's the guy that's set up to be a really good franchise quarterback. He's been in the spotlight already, knows what it's like. He's got a Hall of Fame father, obviously. And look, let's make no mistake about it. Colorado was a terrible program when Coach Prime and Shador and Travis Hunter and Shiloh and the rest of the team got there. And now they're not only are they bowl eligible, but they have an opportunity. They were ranked 20th overall in the college football playoff rankings going into the weekend, and then picked up a victory over Texas Tech. So they're going to climb in the rankings. They literally could find themselves in the playoffs coming out of the Big 12. So, yeah, there's something to be said about that kind of quarterback. And I know I have a lot of people on Twitter hitting me up saying, oh, he ain't this, he ain't that. It's a down class. Whatever the case may be, the dude is calm, cool, and collective under pressure. He scrambles not to run. He scrambles to reposition himself and throw the ball down the field, which I think is important. And when he does run, he's smooth with it. It's not a panic run. You know, I don't know how many times when I was watching Colorado, Texas Tech on Saturday, I kept telling the wife, the Raiders don't have a quarterback that can do just what he just did. I said that probably about 5 times. Rolling out, then reposition himself, deliver the ball down the field, or even pick up a first down on like 3rd and 7. Right, all of a sudden, okay, step up in the pocket, okay, slide to the side, have the sense of, where he's at and where he needs to get. It's just it's like pocket awareness, being quarterback smart, being football smart, having that IQ, and he's got it. And I know a lot of people don't like him because of his last name, and that's fine. Some people love him because of his last name, right? It's just kind of the gift and the curse that goes with it. But as far as just a pure quarterback, I believe he is the guy. He was 30 for 43 on Saturday for 291 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Colorado won 41-27 over Tech. Again, 7-2 so far in the season, bowl eligible, and they've got a path to the college football playoffs if they continue to handle their business. So again, Shador Sanders is QB1 for me, and I'm hoping that that's who the Raiders end up grabbing. But again, right now they're picking number 5 overall in the upcoming draft. Jalen Milroe, Alabama, Roll Tide. Right, 12 for 18 on the day. They got the big victory over LSU, 42-13. He was 12 for 18, 109 yards passing, but he had 12 carries for 185 yards and 4 touchdowns. Yeah, let me slow that down. 12 carries, rushes, ran the ball 12 times for 185 yards and 4 touchdowns. Only threw the ball 12 for 18 for 109 yards. But man, you want to talk about a dude who delivered against LSU. That was a big-time victory. That was an elimination game as far as I was concerned. That was a top 15 game in college football. But, Alabama 7-2 on the season. They're not playing great, but they have a shot at the playoffs as well. And I'll say this, Jalen Milroe, to me, is a guy that, one, I like. I've liked him a lot. I thought that under Kalen DeBoer, he was really going to have an opportunity to be a really good player, and he was going to develop, as we saw Michael Penix develop, into a top 10 pick, right? He went number 8 overall to the Atlanta Falcons. But Milroe had been struggling. And so I had a few people hit me up on Twitter. It's like, man, Q, if the Raiders can't get Shador, I'm good with Milroe. And as much as I like Jalen Milroe, I do have concerns. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to blow smoke up your backside. It's not my style. He has a great deep ball. He's very athletic, as you could tell by the 12 carries for 185 yards. It's the intermediate stuff that bothers me and worries me and concerns me. He's not as sharp as he should be. And that's really been his issue for the last 2 seasons. He really is a guy that might end up going back to Bama next year to try to continue to sharpen his tools up. I don't know. I mean, he'll get obviously his grade and his review when the season's over. Hey, this is where you're projected to go. And it might be worth just going, right? If they say you're a top 10 pick, it probably makes more sense to go. You know, if they say, hey, you go back next year, come back, you'll be a top 3 pick, then maybe he goes back to Bama. But great athlete, obviously, 185 yards, 4 touchdowns. The things he could do with his feet, especially if you have a suspect offensive line like the Raiders do, is really good. But again, the intermediate stuff, the anticipation passes, him not being able to hit those consistently, that concerns me. Cam Ward, the University of Miami, I should say. I almost said the Miami Dolphins. 25 for 39, 348 yards, 3 touchdowns, 5 carries for -5 yards, and they lost. They were undefeated. They were number 4 in the country, and they lost to Georgia Tech. Shout out to Haynes King, by the way. Covered Haynes King when he was in high school. He was there in Longview in East Texas, and I remember going to all the way out to East Texas and watching a playoff game between Temple High and then Longview, and his dad is the coach there at Longview. He went to Texas A&M. He's a heck of a quarterback. Georgia Tech's got a really good one. I'm not saying he's a franchise quarterback, but Haynes King, man, what a performance he put on for Georgia Tech as, again, they knocked off Miami from the undefeated ranks. So they're number 4 in the country. They're going to drop a little bit, probably 10, 11, 12, whatever the case may be. We'll find out their ranking on Tuesday. They're a college football playoff team, I do believe. It was just a bad day at the office for Miami. But Cam Ward, he's got all the arm talent. He's got all the athleticism. The only knock on him, I've said it multiple times, he trusts his arm sometimes a little bit too much. But that's the same knock they had on Patrick Mahomes. I think it worked out pretty well for him. He makes passes that you say, no, until it's completed. Then you're like, yeah, right? It's kind of like the Steph Curry effect in basketball. Don't shoot that. Don't shoot. That's a terrible shot. And then he hits it. It's like, oh, that was a great shot, right? That's kind of the Cam Ward thing. He's got those passes that he makes that that he probably should not be throwing, but he completes them a lot of times, and so it's a good one. But when he throws those interceptions, like, yeah, you shouldn't have done that. But Cam Ward had a heck of a night as well, but Miami lost to Georgia Tech. How about Ole Miss? Shout out to Ole Miss knocking off Georgia. Yeah, 28-10, and it didn't even feel like it was that close. Ole Miss beat the brakes off of Georgia, right? And I said it going into the game, like if there was any opportunity for Ole Miss to win against Georgia, it would be this year, because not only do they have a strong offense led by Lane Kiffin, former Raiders head coach, but they also have a really strong defense. But Jackson Dart, their quarterback, 13 for 22, 199 yards and a touchdown. Also ran the rock 8 times for 50 yards. And again, Ole Miss with a really big win right there, and that's going to push them up. They're talking about a team that's right there on the verge of being a college football playoff team and knocking off Georgia. They're going to knock them down from what top 4 pick, top 5 team to in the teens somewhere. They might even be out of the college football playoffs as of right now. So Jackson Dart is a guy that's probably not being talked about a lot, but he's a guy that you should pay attention to. He's a really good quarterback, can sling that thing. I know those numbers weren't fantastic, 13 for 22, 199 yards and a touchdown, but he also had an interception as well. But still, he's a really, really good quarterback, as many of you know. But if you're not paying attention to Jackson Dart and Ole Miss, make sure you're doing that. And then on the other side of things for Georgia, Carson Beck, he hasn't been the same guy. It's funny, in the barbershop I go to here in Henderson, in the cut, my guy Q, it's funny, he's a barber named Q. He's a big Georgia guy. And he keeps telling me, he's like, Q, Carson Beck hasn't been Carson Beck since Brock Bowers left. Right? Carson Beck has just taken step back after step back after step back every single time, all season long since Brock Bowers has been gone. And we see what Brock Bowers is doing for the Raiders. Carson Beck has just been hurting his stock. He was 20 for 31, 186 yards and interception, sacked 5 times. So Ole Miss beat him down. Like I said, Beck has been struggling. His stock has dropped. I feel like he's, at one point was a probably number 1 overall pick, guy that everyone looked at as the number 1 overall pick. He's probably barely making the top 10 now. Now, again, I gave you all the teams that are in the top 10 right now: the Jaguars, the Giants, the Titans, the Browns, the Raiders, the Dolphins, the Patriots, the Saints, the Jets, and the Panthers. There's enough quarterbacks where he could still end up being a top 10 selection, but he's not really a top 10 quarterback, or a top 10 player, I should say, as of right now. But, who knows? I don't know if how much interest the Raiders have in him, but we do know he has a great connection with one Brock Bowers. But he's been struggling, and Georgia took another loss. Now they're 7-2 on the season. They'll drop in the rankings. They'll probably be right there on the fringe of being a college football playoff team or not. So there you go. Carson Beck, 20 for 31, 186 yards and a pick, sacked 5 times as Georgia lost to Ole Miss 28-10. So just wanted to give you an update on the quarterbacks, the ones that I'm looking at: Shedeur Sanders, Jalen Milroe, Cam Ward, Jackson Dart, and also Carson Beck, what they were able to do over the weekend. What's on your mind? What's your thoughts? What's your concerns? Just what you want to say. 707-654-4693. That's the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line. Your calls and texts are coming up next as we close out the show on this Veterans Day here on the Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about a couple more great sponsors here on the Locked On Raiders podcast, including Omaha Steaks. Nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. This year, skip the holiday hustle and bustle and save 50% off gourmet gifts site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, get a $30 reward card when you shop early and score an extra $30 off with promo code NFL. With 5 generations of experience, they consistently deliver the world's best steak experience, and the gifting experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully curated gift packages starting at $89.99. From legendary steaks to mouthwatering desserts and more, save 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, all listeners of the Locked On Raiders podcast get an extra $30 off with promo code NFL and a $30 reward card when you shop early. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com, OMAHA steaks.com, and an extra $30 off with the promo code NFL. Minimum purchase may apply. I also want to tell you about our great friends at FanDuel, and it's never too late to jump into the NFL action. Yeah, I know Week 10 is just about done. Monday Night Football is coming up, but America's number one sportsbook is FanDuel, and you should take advantage of it right now. New customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, and it's all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, check out the latest stats, view the live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. All you got to do is visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Again, $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start things off with a call from Raider Eddie in Denver, calling to talk about continuity. And then he wants to talk about the other side of continuity when it comes to making an argument for why coaches can be hired and fired year to year. Here he is, Raider Eddie in Denver.
Hey, what's up? This is Raider Eddie in Denver. Hey, love the show, love the banter. Love being able to put the thoughts out there for the nation to digest, think about, or not, or just ignore. But love the platform. Anyway, you're talking a little bit about continuity on today's show. This is Thursday's podcast. I want to give you the other side of it, which is be a team like the Texans. The Texans hired and then fired 4 straight head coaches, and they have DeMarco Ryans right now, and who appears to be their guy. Of course, they got their quarterback, and they also got a really good edge rusher to go with the new head coach. But in the NFL, it can be year to year, and if you make a mistake with the hire, there's no reason why you would want to stick with it, in my opinion. When you look at AP, it was a very emotional hire. We've got to all admit that. I think the nation was hurting after the McDaniels fiasco. It was a huge error by our owner to hire McDaniels and try to transplant the Patriot way. That was a huge, huge mistake. That hurt emotionally to do that. So when AP came in and he gave us a breath of fresh air, and he was a really good substitute teacher, and there were some good metrics, by the way, along with that improvement, what looked to be improvement at the end of last season under AP. Defense was playing much better. More discipline when guys felt freer and a little bit looser. They had more discipline, fewer mistakes, fewer penalties. But AP is not a tactician. He cannot, based on the evidence, he can't make the in-game adjustments necessary. He can't bring in the right staff. Q. What I'm looking at right now and looking at today is, all right, you promoted Scott Turner. I can see that. That kind of makes sense. But why Norv Turner? You didn't need another old has-been. You already have Hugh Jackson. Okay, you already have another old guy that used to be a head coach. I can't remember his name. But you bring in Norv Turner now. It doesn't make any sense. What I think happened is I think they asked Scott Turner to take over the play calling, and I think Scott Turner said, fine, but you got to hire my dad as well. I just don't like it, Hugh. What's the reason for bringing in Norv Turner? Another has-been on another podcast, another show. They're calling it the movie Cocoon, reenacted. If you know that movie, it's all about these old people that try to recapture their youth. I thought that was hilarious. Anyway, Hugh, we've got to move on. We've got to hire a young, smart mind, preferably a smart offensive head coach, and someone that can bring in the right team around him.
Eddie, thanks for the call. And yeah, I mean, the year to year, I don't know, is a terrible idea as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, the Texans did it 4 years in a row, but that was after years of Bill O'Brien and the continuity there. The Texans were looked at as a terrible organization. And really, honestly, the only reason DeMeco Ryans took that job is because he played there, right? Problem is, if you start firing year after year after year, assistants or good assistants won't take that job, right? I mean, think about it. It's not just the head coach that you're talking about. When you hire a head coach, they hire assistants. Assistants aren't going to want to pack up their family, move to, say, Las Vegas, and think that, you know what, this might be a year-to-year thing. And that's why when you look at some staffs, you say, yeah, what's up with that staff? Well, because they're probably the ones like Luke Getsy. He probably was the one willing to take, a 2-year deal as opposed to like Cliff Kingsbury, who wanted a 3-year deal and the Raiders wouldn't give him, or they, pushed back on it and he decided to, hey, this is not for me, right? I mean, that's why when Gruden got the long 10-year deal, all of his assistants got 5-year deals. So they were all like, okay, that's all job security. So if you get a coach that all of a sudden year after year after year in a certain organization is getting fired, guess what's going to happen? Assistants aren't going to want to go there because they're going to think, yeah, okay, so we have a little bit of struggles. We're going to get fired anyway, right? So that's why it's a bad idea. I get it, trying to find a coach and find a coach and find a coach until you get the right one, but there's a lot that goes into it. That's why it should not be a normal practice to hire and fire coaches. It should not be the fact that I've been here since 2021 in Las Vegas, and there's been Gruden, there's been Bisaccia, there's been McDaniels, there's been AP as the interim, and now AP as the full-time head coach, and potentially next year a new head coach, right? Depending on what ownership, front office, Tom Brady, I don't know, right? I think AP is good, but we don't know until we see it, right? So, I mean, that's just way too many coaches in that short amount of time. So I get what you're saying, but you have to understand where I'm coming from, that it's not a good practice to have that many coaches. But thanks for the call. I do appreciate you. Let's get a text in from Donnie Raider. It says, Q, Donnie Raider from Carson City. A lot of draft talk happening on the bye week. I'm curious as to your thoughts on this scenario. We come out of the bye week and do just enough to push ourselves out of striking distance to get our quarterback in the draft. What will it cost for us to move up from a top 10 spot, for example, to get to that number 1 or 2 spot? Also, I'd like to shine a light on the bright side of not having our quarterback yet. There are a lot of teams who have paid their franchise guy and are no better off than us this year. Jacksonville and Dallas, just to name 2. So I'm hopeful to say this at the least. We have some solid draft capital, a hefty amount of cap space to spend to get AP his much-needed pieces in place. Appreciate you, Q. Raiders for life. That's Donnie Raider. And it's a really good text and a really good point that you bring up. There are teams, as I mentioned, right? There's teams that have quarterbacks. They've paid their quarterbacks, and they're not in a good position like the Jaguars. Trevor Lawrence is part of the $55 million a year club. He's not an elite quarterback. Dak Prescott is part of the $60 million a year quarterback club. He's not an elite quarterback. And I know there's an argument. People say, this is not your money, Q. Who cares? You're right. It's not. But if you're going to pay that kind of money, you want to have that kind of results. And teams aren't getting it. Cleveland, they gave a fully guaranteed contract to Deshaun Watson. And he's not that guy, right? I mean, look at Miami. They gave a big contract to Tua, and he's worth every penny of it. Don't get me wrong. But with his concussion history, what are they going to do in that situation, right? There's so many teams in these situations. So you're absolutely right about that, right? And as far as, if the Raiders come out of their bye week and they've got 8 games left and they win just enough to not be in a really good position, you look at it right now. Jacksonville, they're not going to get a quarterback. The Giants, they will. Tennessee, they will. Cleveland, they should. The Dolphins, they probably won't. New England doesn't need one. The Saints, who knows what they'll do. The Jets won't get one as long as Aaron Rodgers says he's coming back. Panthers are another question. Like, those are the top 10 teams right now. So I think that the Raiders could make a move if they have to. Their number one job is to go get their quarterback. I do think, especially in the case of Shedeur, with all the dots that seem like they're all kind of aligning, the stars are aligning for him, I feel like that there's going to be, I don't want to say a power play because somebody's going to take that and run with it and say that I'm reporting that. But I'm just saying in my gut feeling, I have a feeling that the family, Shedeur Sanders' family, Coach Prime, Deion Sanders' family is going to try to say where he can go and where he can't go, like where they will agree to go to and where they won't. Like Jacksonville was not a team. The Giants, maybe he'd go to New York. Tennessee, I don't see him going there. Cleveland, definitely don't see him going there, right? The Saints, maybe New Orleans. Carolina, don't see him going there. I feel like, I don't want to say it's going to be exactly like Eli Manning's situation, but I feel like if anyone has the chance to pull an Eli Manning type, it would be Coach Prime, Shedeur, and all them. I think that they would be the ones that could pull that off. But thanks so much for the text. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Jacob in Ohio. He's calling to talk about and ask about second-year tight end Michael Mayer and what is the latest and the greatest when it comes to him. Here he is, Jacob in Ohio.
Hey, this is Jacob from Ohio. Appreciate everything you do, Q and Ari. I appreciate both of y'all big time. I just have to ask, or I have to bring it back up because people are starting to forget it's been so long. What in the heck is going on with Michael Mayer? I know you probably don't have the answer, but it's like, all right, so when they said it's a personal issue, I respect that, and I think that's very cool that people are allowed to have their own privacy. That should not go overlooked. But, man, it's been 9 weeks now or something, and it's like, okay, so whatever's going on, like, I genuinely am just curious because, people think, I don't know, I was excited as hell when we got him. I was so excited when we drafted him. And he could be, it's not like he would save our team. It's just at the same time, it's like, bro, you have so much potential. He could be so good. He could be such a good blocker, such a good weapon in receiving. Everything about him. I would love to have him on the field. And it's now gotten to a point where it's like, what's going on? Like, what's actually happening? Like, are you throwing your career away? I don't, and I might be insensitive for saying that because it might be something serious, but I also feel like we deserve answers. I mean, after a certain point, and I understand that, like, that man is living his own life, and I don't deserve to know anything about him. So I'm kind of at a crossroads with it. But what's going on, man? Why? What's happening? I would love to have him, and I would love to at least know what's going on, or like something. It's been like 9 weeks now. Anyways, I figure I'd share the laugh of also every time you spell out Locked On Raiders, I end up thinking of Method Man because I go LOCKED on. But I know that's like a corny joke, but I do end up having that song stuck in my head all day, every day after listening to your show, and I appreciate you guys.
Jacob, thanks so much for the call. I appreciate you. And yeah, everything you said about Michael Mayer is correct, what he can be on the field. But I could tell you, without knowing all the details, right, I got to slow that down, without knowing all the details, because there's some that'll say, Q said this, Q said that. No, I just know what's going on with Michael Mayer is a personal situation, right? I've said that multiple times. It's a personal situation. Vinny Bonsignore has reported that he could be possibly back in the building this week. But as far as like the situation, what's going on, like the exact details, we don't have the right to know that. If it's personal, we don't have the right. Some of us are open books. Some of us, we have stuff going on in our personal life, and we'll come out and tell you. Like me, I'll come out and say it because that's just me. But everyone doesn't have to do that. And Michael Mayer and the Raiders don't have to tell us exactly what's going on. All I can say, as a matter of fact, without a shadow of a doubt, is that it is a personal situation, and it does sound like he could be coming back sooner rather than later. Would love to see him on the field, no doubt, because he could be everything that you mentioned. But I want Michael Mayer to be right. I want Michael Mayer to feel comfortable in who he is. Whatever the situation is, I hope it's better, because that is some real deal stuff. This is a great, fantastic game that we watch. We love it, right? It's a kid game that these guys get paid a king's ransom for to play. But at the end of the day, is not more important than whatever's going on in his personal life, just life type situations. So we don't have the right to know exactly what it is. All we need to do is understand that it's not anything to do with, well, Brock Bowers is getting more attention, or they're not throwing the ball to me enough, or this, that, and the third. It has nothing to do with anything on the field. It is a personal situation with Michael Mayer, and we wish him the best. We'll close out with a text from Alex in San Diego. It says, Q, it's Alex from San Diego. Love your show. My son, Alex Jr., and I listen to it every morning on our way to school. Can you please give him a shout out? It's his 18th birthday on Monday, November 11th. This is always a special day for me as he was born on Veterans Day. I served in the United States Marines, and he is my Veterans Day gift. I love him so much. I'm very proud of him. I'll be taking him to the Raiders home game against Denver. Hopefully we can meet you at the torch and shake your hand. Thanks for all that you do for us Raider fans, and always just win, baby. That's Alex in San Diego, and happy birthday. Happy birthday to Alex Jr., 18 years old, Veterans Day. What a perfect way to close out the show, right? Open up the show talking about Veterans Day, showing that love. You heard Max Crosby showing that love. And again, I think that's a perfect way to close things out. Some folks are off work today. Some folks are working. I'm not. Actually, I'm going to be off all day today. No radio shows at all. Of course, we'll have the podcast coming up on Tuesday. But just, definitely want to shout out to the veterans out there. I don't like to assume things, but Alex, maybe that's why you're in San Diego. Because of your military ties that you had. Who knows? But anyway, definitely want to show all that love, man, to all the veterans, not just Alex out there, but all the veterans, like my guy Vegas Chess, Peg Leg Raider, and so many more that served and really, again, allow guys like me, knuckleheads like me, to do what I do on the daily and do it with our freedom. So thank you so much, Alex. Shout out again. Happy birthday to Alex Jr. And shout out to all the veterans out there, all the active military out there as well. And of course, if you lost someone that was helping fight for our freedoms in this country, we shout you out as well. You're always in our thoughts and prayers as well. And we give you the biggest thank you that we can. So thanks so much for that. And again, we'll be back tomorrow. I know it's an off day today, but we'll deep dive into this article. CBS Sports, James Jones, Amy Trask and company had a conversation about a meeting that the Raiders had on Monday last week when they moved on from Luke Getsy and James Craig, the offensive line coach, and Scangarello, the quarterback coach. They had a big meeting, and apparently things aren't too smooth right now in the Raiders organization. We'll talk about that coming up on Tuesday's show. We'll have news and notes and, of course, more calls and texts. Sacktown Mark got a text from the 661 we'll get to as well, and plenty more. So until then, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. More importantly, as always, just win, baby.